Hello, Surface Warrior Nation. My name is Fred Rice. I'm the Director of Public and Congressional Affairs at the Military Surface Deployment and Distribution Command. And it's my pleasure today to introduce Major General Stephen Farman, Commanding General of Sddc, Mr. Michael Hutchison, the Deputy to the Commander, Sddc, and Command Sergeant Major Rocky Carr, our Senior Enlisted Leader, Sddc. As we've done with previous town halls, if you have questions during the town hall, please feel free to type them into the chat box. We'll do our best to get to every question. And after the town hall is complete, you'll be able to view it both on our Facebook channel and our YouTube channel. With that, General Farman, over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Fred. So, as Fred said, greetings, Surface Warrior Nation. It's great to be back with you again. I know we've been doing these at least once a month since all this started. Had a few bumps in the road early on with different methods we were trying, but I think we finally cracked the code, and really excited to spend some time with you today. And our themes are primarily going to be reintegration and what to expect. And I sense, based on some of the questions that you have already been sending in, that's clearly on everybody's mind. So we want to address our reintegration thoughts, planning, what to expect, those types of things. And then we're going to talk a little bit about leading through transitions. As always in the summer, we have a lot of transitions, both here at the headquarters and also in the brigades and battalions, and we'll address that as well. Couple other quick points. I just want to say how incredibly proud I am of the entire team. I think we have become very telework savvy over the last 100 days or so of telework, or since the beginning of this, which is about mid-March. Very proud of the percentage of people that we've had teleworking, which has been upwards to at a high watermark of 93% globally, and then we've fluctuated down to 90% occasionally. But everybody is continuing to keep their head in the game. They're doing a heck of a lot of great work. And then also, the Army remains in motion. It has from the beginning of this, and the Joint Force remains in motion, and that is because of everybody doing their part, doing their job. We haven't skipped a beat when it comes to executing our purpose, which is to move, deploy, and sustain the armed forces to deliver readiness and lethality at speed. Speed is our guiding principle, and it has remained that even in spite of the COVID and the conditions that have changed. Even though the conditions are different, our task and purpose and the expectations of what we have to achieve on the mission front has not changed and will not change. And we continue to lead our way through this, and I'm immensely proud of everybody in Surface Warrior Nation and what we're doing across the globe. We've crossed a grim milestone in our nation with 100,000 that have succumbed to the scourge of this virus. I'm going to knock on wood and just say that we are grateful that Surface Warrior Nation has not had to be one of those numbers, and that I attribute that to the standards and discipline of the team and the team of teams. Whether you're coming into the office, if you're one of the few that do, or you're out there in the telework space and still adhering to standards and discipline, whether you have to go to the grocery store and come home or not, our numbers are very, very low. In fact, we have 2 in our Deployment Support Command that are still fighting through a positive COVID, testing positive. We're keeping close watch on them, but we continue to do very, very well across Surface Warrior Nation, and I thank you for adhering to the standards and discipline and the matrix that Sergeant Major Carr helped us put together. I feel very confident will guide us through this even further. So again, thank you all for what you're doing, and let's go ahead and dive into some questions.
All right, thank you, sir. Our first question is one of our pre-submitted questions, and that is, when we get back to the office, how are you going to enforce that civilian employees clean the common areas?
Yeah, so a really good question. My perspective on this is pretty simple. It's personal responsibility. If you have a certain section, you may dedicate somebody who's in there as somebody who steps away from the crowd and looks across and makes sure everybody is doing their part. But quite simply, it's personal responsibility. I don't think with the mature audience that we have, I don't think we have to convince people that if you do come into work, you have an obligation and a responsibility, to clean your common areas for the greater good of the organization and to protect your Surface Warrior teammates. Because we always say we're just one touch away from having an event. And I don't think anybody who comes in here wants to be that one touch as a result of not cleaning an area. And I know we have cleaning crews that do extra cleaning in the common areas, in the restrooms. So when you come back into work, you will have extra clean areas to go into, and then your personal space, you have to do your due diligence to keep it clean. And we will have materials available for you to do that. In fact, I think Sergeant Major has something he can show you related to that.
I do.
So,
Sir, so we have cleaning supplies at the common area locations that are diluted specifically for fighting and sanitizing the COVID-19 virus. So we'll have all that ready. And like you said, it's an individual responsibility for your individual workstation, but those common areas, we're going to use that COP matrix that you'll see when you come in, and it'll tell us when and how we ought to clean surfaces. And that coupled with the contractor enhanced cleaning protocol and enhanced scheduling that they have. So we're confident that we can get the workplace safe for everybody to come back into home.
and I will say, personal purchase, I brought in my own, PPE, if you will, that I keep handy at my desk, and I'll just pull this out and wipe down keyboards or do whatever I have to do in my own common space, which you're looking at right here. So you're free to bring in whatever you think you need to keep your space clean, even though we're going to have that capability available to you as well. Anything else to add on that?
No, sir, you covered it.
Okay.
Sir, we have another question that concerns our return, and that is as follows. What considerations are there for high-risk personnel, including employees who have compromised immune systems due to their current health conditions? And how will that impact our reintegration?
Yeah, so I think this is another area of personal responsibility. We're all in this together. We do track on our metrics, people that fall into high-risk categories, at least 65 and older, 60 and older, but there are HIPAA standards, and we're not going to pry into people's personal space, but I think you individually know if you fall into these high-risk categories, and I would just offer to you to trust your chain of command and communicate in a candid, clear way to your supervisors and the leadership in the chain of command. And if we know the circumstances, we will make sure we do the due diligence to put you in a position where you are always going to be safe. And we will take the right precautionary measures. We will make the right decisions, and we'll do that in a what's the term I'm looking for?
In a measured way.
In a measured way, but in a confidential manner as well, is I guess the word I was looking for. Anything else from the team on that?
I think that's it, sir.
The only thing I'd add to that is, I believe the terminology that the SecDef used was isolate your vulnerable population. So
Right.
it kind of goes to exactly what you said.
Yeah, so I think this applies too. It's not only you personally being vulnerable or high risk and coming into work, but if you're coming into work and then going home to somebody who's high risk and in a vulnerable category, that's something else that needs to be taken into consideration. So again, the more we know, the better we can make a decision, and you should not feel like we're going to put you in a precarious situation. Just communicate, trust. We always talk about trust and teamwork. We want to move at the speed of trust.
Cool, thank you, sir. This next question, gentlemen, is one that seems to be very popular. We got quite a few different variations of this question. It's as follows. When and how will we be notified of the reintegration phases and when we should return to the office? How will that word get out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish I had a definitive answer for everybody on the net today where I could say, you know what, on this date, that we're going to bring so many people back and so on and so forth. We are all leading our way through this. U.S. Transcom at the headquarters, they're gonna begin maybe, and everybody will be on different time schedules for this. So just because the wing or the headquarters and you hear through the grapevine that they've brought more people in, you should not assume that that's gonna immediately apply to us. Our guiding principles are we're gonna take a conditions-based approach, a measured approach, and it's gonna be task and purpose oriented. So, and another way to look at this is we wanna go slow to go fast. We don't wanna just flood the system and say, hey, we're allowed to bring folks in because we had a couple changes. You know, it doesn't, you know, the race to be first in this category is probably not a race you wanna win. I mean, I think the smart way to do this is a measured approach, and let's bring the right people in. That's another litmus test we have. Right people, right node, in the right posture to deliver the right effect. And how does that translate into our G codes here at the headquarters? Just because the G3 has so many people in doesn't mean the G5 needs to have the same amount of people in. Again, there's a lot of different calculations to this. We have to take a look at what's required during the week or in the coming months. And if certain people have to come in, we'll work that measured approach also through the supervisor channels, through the chain of command, and so the notification process will work in that way. And I'm looking at a transition plan that's sitting right in front of me, and it's mirrored off the matrix, which I know has been pushed out in a Surface Warrior 6 sends. Everybody's seen this. And there's certain decision points in the journey here, and some may happen sooner than others, but I know, for example, our phase 2, if I'm looking at the sheet here, we were looking on our plan for July, you know, in the early part of July, end of June, as an opportunity to maybe begin to phase in more people. But we're starting to see that we're getting a little more latitude sooner than that. So again, we will take a measured, conditions-based approach to it and make sure that we have the right task and purpose in mind when we bring people into work. Let me give you another example. And this is kind of, I think we have to be very savvy as an organization like this. Let's say that it's important for me to come in to do something, but it only takes a half day of being in the building. And then I can get that, what I need to be in the building to get done. Well, at that point in time, then you can go back out and telework. That doesn't mean that when we say you're back to work, it has to be 8 to 5 or whatever the normal day is. You could come in for a 2 to 3 hour burst in the middle of the day and then go back out to telework. We have to find the right sweet spot and be savvy as an organization through the chain of command and through our supervisors to make sure, you know, we are living up to those guiding principles. Right people in the right node, in the right posture to deliver the right effect. And the right posture is this matrix. And currently we're in COP 3, which is in phase 1. And so whatever is listed in that column, you would be expected if you come into work to adhere to the standards in that column. And we hold everybody accountable to that. I'll pause there to see if anybody's got anything more.
Sir, I think that's spot on.
You hit it, sir.
But we're anxious, you know, let me just add, you know, we're anxious as the rest of you to get back to as much normalcy as we can, and, you know, so we're not trying to pump the brakes just because we can pump the brakes. We watch this very closely every day, and we want to make sure our priorities always stay true, and they haven't changed. Protect the force and mission assurance. You know, those are our 2 priorities, and we always got to strike a balance there.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is whether or not employees will be issued PPE when they return to the office.
Right, another great question. I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Hutchinson because I know he's got a good handle on the numbers and the PPE status that we have. So Mike, why don't you inform the team here?
So everybody's going to be issued masks when they return. At the headquarters, when you come back in, you will be issued 2 masks. For the headquarters, we've got about 2,000 masks in stock. We're in the process of, after having planned to issue 2 masks to every employee, we're ordering additional masks. In addition, We have the opportunity to reach out to FEMA, to our local region of FEMA, and request a certain number of free masks. We're doing that. We're asking for 300 free masks, so you'll be given 2 masks when you come in. In addition, you're always free to bring your own mask and your own wipes, sanitary wipes and all that. So the short answer is yes, we will be issuing you a limited amount of PPE.
And those folks out at the Tactical Edge in our brigades, the brigades have an amount of PPE, and they're going to ensure that they have PPE for the workforce as they return to. And just as Mr. Hutchinson said, you'll always be able to use your mask, and those locally done masks and those ones that you make from the cloth material. All of that is still fine, and you can use that if that makes you feel more comfortable.
Absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. Again, there are a lot of unknowns as we come back to our enacting of the reintegration plan. Another question that has been asked a couple of times is, when we're in the office, who do we contact if we don't feel safe in our work area due to someone else's negligence or inconsideration?
Well, I'll just begin by saying I know surface warriors, if you're living up to what it means to be a surface warrior, we understand that we all accept our personal responsibility to do what's right. And this is one of the things, because we're playing the long game here, it could be 12 to 18 months or until we get a vaccine. Our biggest enemy, besides the virus, is complacency, and if we get complacent and we don't adhere to standards and discipline, that one touch away becomes real, and then that can affect everybody. So, selflessness is important, and not being selfish. Clearly, all these things embody what it means to be a surface warrior. If by chance you see somebody who might not be a surface warrior, who's not doing what they should be doing, inform your chain of command, inform your supervisor. If you inform your supervisor and you feel like nothing got done, then just go to the next layer of the chain of command. And work your way up the chain. And again, if we're all staying true to, the human factor, which is, protect the force, our top priority here, I think, we'll all self-correct, we'll self-synchronize, we'll do the right thing, and we shouldn't have any problems. Because we all understand the scourge of this virus and what it means, and what it can mean, unfortunately, it can be deadly if it needs to. We want to avoid that at all costs. I don't know if there's more to add there.
The other thing I would say is, and so I've got asked that same question before by somebody through email, and I would just say we're cognizant of it. And the boss talked about the signage that's up in the building, and that's everywhere. It's everywhere, telling you exactly what the standards are, what it is for that day, what we're currently operating under. But I would tell you, if you haven't been into the office, when you come into the building, right now under COP 3 and HP Con Charlie, your temperature is taken when we come in, so everybody's temperature is taken. You have to answer some screening questions when you come in, and that's right in the front door. And then there you have the visible signage that lets you know. And then in each one of the common areas and in the offices around the headquarters, that same thing is up and posted so that everybody knows that. And so I think you'll see that we're taking it serious enough, and we're assessing our ability to do it all throughout the day. And I know that they're doing that in the brigades and down through the Tactical Edge too. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the amount of attention that we're placing on it. And like General Foreman said, we're looking at it and we're tweaking it every day to make sure that we have it right.
A couple other quick points. Again, it's about, Sergeant Major's the standard bearer of the unit. That's why he's communicating the way he is, but we all have to be standard bearers. We all have to own our responsibility in this process and adhere to the standards and disciplines that are published. And that's for the greater good. Another quick point, and we may elaborate more on it later, but I'll just go ahead and delve into it right now, and that is the reintegration training. I took a session just yesterday. I'm very pleased with the baseline product that we have. I've provided additional guidance. Mr. Hutchinson and Command Sergeant Major Carr were in the huddle with me for that session. I think now we're just putting the right polish on it and trying to get this thing packaged in a way that it's going to translate smartly out to the team. And then we will push this out. I've told the team it's a top priority, and my intent is to get this out on the wire by the end of next week, where people could then begin to pull up the training in a telework space, review it, take the test, put the answers into TED and get the certification in TED. And that certification, and when you are called to come in and you're notified that, we need you to come in for a half day or you're authorized to come in, you're gonna need to have completed that training before you show up. So we're gonna need, we wanna put a first-class product together. We need you all to take it, take the test, be certified, and then once we get in the right fighting stance, then we can bring the right people in. And that should answer a lot of questions too, that we're alluding to, and we're answering these questions now. This training will kind of lift the veil of what to expect, as you show up to the front door and work your way back into the building. Over.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, we have a follow-up question for Mr. Hutchison. A little bit of detail asked about by Mr. Scott Vaughn on our Facebook feed, and that's whether or not the masks that will be issued here at work are going to be washable and or reusable.
And the answer to that question is, I don't know. I will find out.
Great question and an honest answer, and we'll do our best to get the information out.
Okay.
We have another question from our Facebook feed, and this one comes from Ms. Gloria Williams. She works in a cubicle of 4 people, which is in close proximity to 4 other people, so 8 in total, in very close proximity. Has anything been thought about as far as spacing of employees in these close-knit areas?
Right, so that's another great question, and all these things, that's why the measured approach is so important, and we're gonna be working through supervisors at all levels. So again, we can't just bring in an entire section and then have them all sit next to each other. The answer is, you will be spaced. We will be adhering to the matrix. If we're at COP 3 or COP 2, and we're gonna adhere to the spacing requirements, the mask requirements. If those can't be met, we're not gonna be able to bring people into work. So, great question, and that's why we wanna go slow to go fast on this, to make sure, we don't misfire unintentionally on something like that.
The only thing I'd add to that, sir, is,
Please.
that in my mind, that's part of the notion of bringing back segments of your workforce.
Right.
It's not gonna be lottie-dottie, everybody back in the office all at
That's
once.
right.
It's gonna be segments so that we will be spaced out.
And as we get the need for more people, supervisors, and we'll stress this with our supervisors, because we're gonna do a different layer of training with supervisors to, help them prepare for this. But that has to be thought through. And again, things are gonna be different. You can't just go into the conference room anymore with the normal people that you pack into the conference room. There's set limits of people that can be in 3062, you remember these numbers, 3110. In some cases, we stripped out the chairs in 3110, so at the table, you can only put people around the table that are distanced. So there's not even an opportunity for a chair to be there. These are the kinds of smart things that we want to do across the spectrum as we're bringing people in.
And I just want to say too, and we've said it, and it's a measured and conditions-based approach. And so as the HP con goes down, that means the threat is going down, and so that you have different protective measures that we do. And so it'll all be based on that threat and keeping everybody safe. And so as that HP con reduces, that it'll be tied to the threat reducing, and so our protective measures will be in accordance with that. And so we'll be very measured and conditions based, and I think we'll have it right.
Very good.
Thank you. We have a question concerning civilian leave. So, Mr. Hutchison, this may be in your neck of the woods. From Brian King, our deputy G6. The question is, we've seen guidance on increased use or lose allowance carryover for military personnel. Has the command received any guidance on increased annual leave carryover allowances for civilian personnel as a result of COVID-19?
So the answer is no. There's been no guidance that's come down that increases the amount of leave that a civilian can carry over. To change the amount of leave that a civilian can carry over requires a change or requires legislation. There is a proposal that's in Congress, but we don't know if it's going to get enacted. So you really should plan on just taking your leave, even while we're in this COVID shutdown, this COVID isolation period. You know, take leave, do a staycation. The one thing I would tell, I took leave last Friday. If the boss lets me, I'm going to take leave tomorrow. So take your leave even while we're teleworking. Is that a yes, you'll approve my leave?
Approved. No, put me on the spot there. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're good. We've talked about that.
We have a follow-up question from Ms. Karen January on our Facebook feed asking about the masks again. And her question is, if the masks aren't washable or reusable, how often will we be issued replacements? And I understand that once we find out the answer to whether they are replaceable and or washable, we'll then be able to follow up on that answer.
Exactly.
Well, and again, we got 2,000 of them, so that doesn't mean we're bringing 2,000 people in right away. So, you know, if they're not reusable, and we're gonna verify, you know, we have depth there to be able to issue new ones if we need to as people come in, and we're ordering more as we speak. So we are building depth, and we got plenty of hand sand and all the rest of those things, but much more fidelity to come on that answer.
I think what's important there, though, is we're not gonna put anybody in harm's way.
Yeah.
We're not gonna put anybody at increased risk, so we're gonna get it right,
Right.
or we won't have that number of people come in.
Yeah, that's right. If we can't meet the mask criteria, you can't come in, keep
We'll get it.
teleworking.
We'll get it right.
You know, we'll get it right.
Another question from our Facebook feed, this from Perez Call El Edwin, whose question is, there may be some individuals that may not be able to wear a mask for 8 hours a day because it's uncomfortable. What's the guidance on this?
So, you know, as it stands right now, you don't have to wear a mask, you know, 24/7, you know, in the building right now. It's only in certain circumstances, again, back to the, you know, the distances and the conditions on here. So you're not expected to wear a mask for 8 hours while you're at work, sitting at your desk. You can, if you feel inclined to do that. You can wear that the whole day as much as you want. But if you are free and clear and you're meeting all the specs with regard to distancing, you know, you are allowed to, you know, free yourself of the mask.
And I would just add to that, the one thing that I do, like when I'm in my office, I'm not wearing a mask, but if I go out into the hallway, I put the mask on because I'm more likely to see people. Not that I don't see people in my office, but I'm more likely to encounter people in the hallway and may not be able to maintain 6 feet. And I think the guidance that's out there is, it's been out there for a while, is if you cannot maintain 6 feet,
You have
then
to put a mask on.
That's a great point, though, Mr. Hutchinson just brought up about having your mask with you when you leave. And so it's important that if you leave your office and you don't have it on because you're not within 6 feet of somebody, take that thing with you. Because if you enter the elevator, for example, and you're by yourself and people get in, you're gonna need to have that on. And so that's a great point. Is that something you wanna keep with you, whether you have it on and not within 6 feet of somebody or you within 6 feet and you have to put it on? Keep it with you and take those necessary precautions once you enter those common areas because you just don't know when somebody's gonna come around. So that's a great point.
And in our reintegration training, we'll hit this, and I keep holding up this matrix. I'd ask you all to really study this matrix. It went out in a Surface Warrior 6 Sends, and it really breaks it down, and I think them in simple ways. And we're at COP 3, and that's COVID-oriented protective posture, COP. That's what COP stands for, and COP 3 clearly states what the expectations are for you to adhere to. And we wanted to make sure it was simple enough to be able to keep up with, both here at the headquarters and all the way out at the tactical edge if you're executing an operation at a node or at a port.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is whether or not the command has considered increasing the amount of days of telework per week to help with social distancing and not having people so close in proximity?
I think, we are in no rush to throttle back on the teleworking is I think the best way that I would put it is, again, back to go slow to go fast. We are in no hurry to reduce the amount of telework per week. As we get clearance and conditions dictate we can bring more people in, that opens the aperture, and we will work through the chain of command to make sure that we bring the right people in to deliver the right effect in the right posture.
We have another question from our Facebook feed, this one from Bob Sitaro, who asks, with the recent change in the SecDef stop movement, when will headquarters Sddc send out guidance on PCS moves? For him, specifically to specifically Italy to CONUS.
Well, we are executing PCS moves. There are certain people that fall into certain categories, and so there's an exception to policy process that Bob would fall into, and again, working through the chain of command, that can bubble its way up through the ETP, exception to policy process, and we will make sure that in his particular circumstance it adheres to the criteria, and we cross-check it with all the policies and guidance that we have, and we have a whole matrix that keeps us straight in that regard, and it's a very formalized process. But there are people still PCSing in the middle of the COVID-19, and we expect PCS moves to continue to tick upward through the summer and into fall in terms of increasing, and that's not just for us. I mean, I'm talking about for the services. But again, very stringent guidelines that are really coming down through the service channels in terms of who moves, key and essential people move, or they open the aperture, and it works its way. Now, I hope that got to Bob's question, but just keep working that through the chain, Bob, and we'll make sure we get it squared away.
Sir, we've talked a lot about specific information as it relates to our reintegration plan here at our headquarters and out at the brigade headquarters. We have a question that came in reference to mission and operations. That question is as follows. As large cargo movements begin to move once again, and we receive requests from our brigades to support upcoming deployments, will the workforce be allowed to travel to support these operations? If so, will there be any special requirements other than masks or social distancing practices that will be enacted? Also, will we be allowed to provide DDST support when needed?
We are mapping our way through this. We are looking at ways to bring our Deployment Support Command Total Force Integration teammates back into the mix. We definitely, as we go up to scale, we definitely have the latitude to be able to push people out to the nodes to travel. Whether they fly on a plane or they go on a bus at an appropriate special distance, or they go in a van, back to right people, right node, right posture, right effect. So it's not just 30 people because we normally send 30 people to the node to do it. Maybe we can do it with 10, and maybe there's a different way to get them to the port to be able to execute that mission. All those things have to be considered. There's really a complete mission analysis that has to go into the approval process, and we do have the ability to approve, so back to that question, people traveling to a node to execute a mission. And all of that will work its way through the chain of command for approval, so that we're making sure we're doing the due diligence, and we're putting our surface warriors in a position to win when we do execute it.
Sir, another follow-on question in the mission area, this one from Ben Gould. When we are operating with the fourth component, our commercial industry partners, are they required to wear masks?
Yeah, no, Ben, a good question, and the answer is yes. There are standards and discipline. From everything that I've heard from the nodes that we have been executing from, I've heard that the fourth component has been performing at a high level in that respect. Now, there may be pockets where that's not true, and we got to be overly vigilant in those cases, we gotta, number one, not only communicate with our fourth component to tell them to up the ante if we feel like they need to, and I think they will comply because they have the same concerns we do, because we're on teleconferences with them every week, and they're asking for PPE, and they're, getting support from the Department of Transportation to up the ante on their PPE requirements. So we're all in this together. They all have that same mindset, and my spider sense is based on the teleconferences and what I hear from our people at the nodes is that generally everybody is getting the mask, wearing the PPE, and doing what they need to do. Okay, that's not to say, not to whitewash it and say there's not going to be an issue out there. If there is, we got to elevate it and then let it be handled through proper channels, because the fourth component is our team, and we want to deal with them as teammates.
Sir, bringing it back to our headquarters, we have a question that was sent in previously, and that is, will we be in line with the base, Scott Air Force Base, or any host organization with their reopening instructions, or will we strictly follow Army procedures?
Both. We take all into consideration. We will clearly take a look at what the wing has put out. We will take a look at what Transcom puts out. We'll take a look at what Department of the Army puts out, what DOD puts out. We triangulate all that guidance. We make sure we understand our equities in that process. And then we as an organization, based on right people, right node, right posture, right effect, call the ball on what we think is the right, who we need to bring in, when we need to bring people in accordance with all those policies. And we take into CDC guidelines, the state policies, the regional policies, on and on and on. So it's not just a one and done. We look at everything, and we have an entire task force on our team here, Task Force COVID-19. Our surface warrior teammates that make up that team have been doing a phenomenal job of pulling in multiple different policies, and we get this every day. They dissect them and they inform us of what the equities are in there, and we always make sure that we're toeing the line on what standards and discipline, what we're supposed to be doing.
Sir, if I could
Yeah, please.
Just want to add one point to that. My short answer to that question is you'll follow Sddc's guidelines for coming back to work.
Right, yeah, no, thank you for that. I went around the horn and the barn with all that, and that's probably, and I think after I went around the barn on it, I think the cleanest way to put it is what Mr. Hutchinson said. Take your guidance from the tower, which is Sddc, and just trust that we're triangulating all that information to keep us on the high ground.
Sir, now for something completely different, non-related to our current COVID reintegration. We have a question that came in. I saw the general officer announcement stating that Brigadier General Heidi Hoyle will be the next SDDC commander.
Mm-hmm.
What are your plans, and how will she fit into the organization?
Right, so, I'm a fan of General Heidi Hoyle. I mean, I think she's a great officer, and I know she's gonna lead from a great place in her heart, and come in here with all the right kind of dimensions and complexions to take care of Surface Warrior Nation. And I feel like, at least in the last 2.5 years, we've tried very, very hard to put all the foundations in place so that anybody can plug and play into this organization and continue to elevate it at the highest levels. So, I'm very confident in that respect, and certainly with the two gentlemen sitting next to me, they're gonna be in the huddle, and they've been with us for a while, and we got a lot of talent coming into our organization at the headquarters, civilian, military. I mean, I'm just blessed with the talent. It's like, we just have some really great people that are joining our team this summer through transitions. And then same out to our brigades and battalions, which continue to do phenomenal work. So that's that piece. I mean, so congratulations to her. She'll be Surface Warrior 6 on the 23rd of June, which is when the change of command will be. And I know we're gonna, there might be some questions about that. And I'll just simply say that the change of command will be virtual. There'll be protocols in place. There'll be invites that go out that will give you directions on how to click the link to tap into that. And as that gets promulgated, and I would say after the 1st of June, I got a meeting with protocol today, but our plan is to start pumping invites out around the 1st of June. So you'll begin to see more and more information on this. We are going to do it locally here. I think, we're looking at the Scott Event Center as a location so that we can get good connectivity through Facebook Live and things like this, so that no matter where you are, you can tune in and watch, and I hope you do, because it's a powerful tradition for any organization to watch a transfer of command take place, and General Perna and General Lyons will be part of that ceremony. And it'll be an interesting ceremony because part of the ceremony will be my retirement. So you ask, well, what am I doing next? I will be moving into retirement, and I do that with a smile on my face. I mean, it's been a great run of 34 years and 4 months. My actual retirement date will be 1 October. It's been a fantastic run, and the fact that, beginning my journey as a transportation officer and finding myself, moving into the next phase, which I'm really very excited about. Debbie and I are both really excited about because there's great opportunities out there, but to go out at what I think is the quintessential command, at least if you began your journey in the transportation arena, Sddc is the quintessential transportation entity. If you can't be the transportation command commander, this is about as good as it gets, and for me, it's as good as it gets, and I've loved every minute of this command, and I want to share more of those words with you as we get to that point, so I hope you tune in and be part of that 2-part ceremony there for Debbie and I, and thanks for the question.
I'm fired up.
Yeah.
Are we fired up? Ready to go?
Okay.
Yeah, we get the ceremony right. It's going to be
Big
great
ceremony. I mean, even though it's virtual, we'll do the organization justice.
We will. Indeed.
Gentlemen, we have one more question that's just come in, and that is pertaining to the identification of phases in our reintegration plan.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, who is responsible for assigning the phases, and how will supervisors be involved in that decision-making process and the communication?
So in our decision matrix, we've projected out, and this is what this is. It's a matrix, and quite frankly, we can send out this on email. What we'll do is do an email blast. Everybody can at least see the general framework that we're talking about, and you can connect the dots on. And these are just planning horizons. These decision points can move further up, but we've mapped out what we think are logical places for these phases to occur, and I'll be the decision maker in it. And the staff will offer these decision points up based on the conditions that are out there, and then I'll make the decision on whether we're going to shift to a certain phase or not. But we have a plan. It's in time and space, and you all have heard the guidelines that we're working off of.
One more question, gentlemen, and this is from Laura. She asks, is there anything that we can do from home to support or help?
I think, quite frankly, if you're teleworking and doing the work that you can from home, you are, it doesn't matter the proximity you are to this headquarters does not diminish the importance you bring to the headquarters. Everybody counts, everybody matters. As long as you are contributing in the same way that you would if you were sitting at the desk here, that's all I can ask you to do, and in the same time, adhere to standards and discipline, avoid complacency, and stay vigilant, so that when we do have to call you in, you're coming from a clean bubble into a clean bubble. That's what we want.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, everything the CG said was spot on. One thing I'd add to it is if you find yourself with some downtime where you don't have work projects to work on, there's always online training and mandatory training that you can knock out. And I know we've mentioned this before, but telework is an ideal format for knocking out mandatory training and online training.
Agreed.
And you can always take care of yourself. We talk about it all the time. We're one touch away from an incident. So just one thing you can do is take care of yourself and those around you. Continue to operate.
Well, I know that
under
Okay.
those conditions.
Like David Grant sent out something about activity the other day. I thought that was a nice little pamphlet that he pushed out, you know, on how to, push-ups, sit-ups, going on long walks, keeping your head right, you know, mentally, spiritually,
Absolutely.
physically. You know, you can really help our organization by taking care of yourself, like the Sergeant Major said, in all those different, that comprehensive fitness lane. Training leader development guidance still applies, so leader development, you know, for our supervisors, IDPs, counselings, you know, leader-led discussions. You know, the more we can get on the Hollywood squares and leverage the great technologies we have, you know, we can continue to power through this. And I think that organizationally, we're getting really savvy at that.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, we have a question from Brenda Brandon Blair, and she's asking if there's any news on when information about personal leave approval within CONUS beyond the 50-mile radius
Yeah, for
may
military
come
leave.
out for military.
Right, so we are still in a 50-mile radius mode, realizing that there's other policies that have changed. The wing is, you know, kind of expanded the aperture to 250. So what I've opted to do in this circumstance is we're gonna stay with the 50 miles and we'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. So if you're military and you have a desire to wanna travel inside a 250 mile radius, then, you know, you can work through your chain of command, similar to the exception to policy process. It'll come through the back wall here with the team, and we'll have to consider all the eaches, to whether we're gonna grant approval on that. So 50 miles is still 50 miles. The most you can go up to is 250. But if you're interested in going over 50, you need to work it through the chain of command. I like the exception to policy process.
Thank you, sir. And for Mr. Hutchison, are there any details involved with the civilian leave request situation?
No, to my knowledge, there's never been a restriction on civilians in terms of distance you could travel while on leave or on the weekend. So there's been no change to that. And in terms of requesting leave, you request it on telework, just like you would otherwise. You just do an email request to your boss, what the days are, times are that you want to take leave, and then your boss approves it.
I just want to add too, I mean, again, you know, what we're mostly looking for if you're going to go over 50 miles is compelling circumstances, and not, you know, there's a festival that I'd like to attend and it happens to be 80 miles away, or you know, a lakefront, or, you know, so we that's why we just want to be judicious in this process, go slow to go fast. We're willing to adhere to it, but, you know, we'd like to think, you know, people will take the personal responsibility to make it compelling enough, where we're willing to assume some risk with some very strict business rules in the process on granting approval.
Can I add one thing on that point? One other thing I wanted to mention was, and I didn't, was has been no restriction on civilians and the distance they could travel while on leave. However, the guidance that came out from OSC was that civilians are encouraged to stay within 50 miles, but we can't restrict how far they travel while on leave or on the weekend.
Well, gentlemen, that was our last question submitted or received on our live Facebook feed. At this point, we have a little bit of time for some closing comments, and I would like to remind our audience, or let them know if they didn't already, that at 1:30 local Central Daylight Time, the wing here at Scott Air Force Base will also be conducting a town hall of their own, so they should be providing some additional information.
That's good, yeah.
As the CG said, here in SDDC, we take the guidance from the tower, and we'll be able to do that. So, gentlemen, I'd like to hand the ball over to you for any closing comments.
Well, before I go into closing comments, I would like to take the opportunity to just, you know, talk about, you know, SES Mike Williams, you know, who we lost yesterday. Many of the team, you know, not to end on a sad note, and we'll have some closing comments here, but it is sad. I knew Mike personally. I knew him when he was the TEA director, and when I was a brigade commander in SDDC, he was part of the SDDC family, and I knew him then, and I've known him over the last decade, and I last saw him personally on like 1 March, or when I went to Fort Lee to speak at ALU to a pre-command course. So I physically saw him. He actually made a point of coming to see me and gave me a coin. So again, I just, on behalf of Surface Warrior Nation, we want to keep his family in our thoughts and prayers. He was a surface warrior, a mentor to many here, and a well-respected leader in the Surface Warrior Nation. I've already received some emails from the email that I sent out yesterday from others that were obviously in shock based on the news. I don't know the details of anything more than that, but I just know that his family's going through a tough time, and so we wish him, just like we do any surface warrior, him to rest in peace, and we'll keep him in our thoughts and prayers. So I just wanted to take that opportunity, since I know we have hopefully a lot of people up on the net listening. And so now I'll pull it back in here, and if there's any closing comments, I'll toss it to you, Mr. Hutchinson, if you've got anything for the group.
Yeah, I just have just real quick. Everybody's doing the right thing. We're getting the mission done, and you're doing it while teleworking and taking care of yourself and your family, and the rest of the workforce. So thank you for what you're doing, and how you're doing it. The mission is getting done, and you're taking care of yourself. The one thing I just want to add to that is, and I know I hit on it in a quick video that I did with PAO a couple of weeks back, but I know everybody right now is, this whole COVID thing, I know it's getting a little bit old, but I know a lot of people are afraid, and you see people wearing masks all around the place. Just remember, when you're walking through the grocery store, when you're walking down the street, and you encounter somebody and they've got a mask on, behind that mask is a human being, and they're scared too. And we just got to keep in mind each other's humanity as we work our way through this. That's all I got, sir.
Yeah, that's well said. Very well said. Sorry, Major.
And so for me, I just want to thank everybody for what you're doing. Kind of what Mr. Hutchinson said, we're doing great. And sir, our low numbers are an indicator of that. The fact that we've had safe operations, and we're still operating around the globe. I mean, we're still deploying and sustaining the armed forces and delivering readiness and lethality at speed. We're just doing so under the fog of COVID, and we're doing so safely. So thanks so much for what you're doing. I did want to circle back briefly, as you are inextricably linked to the mission and the success here of SDDC in a telework status for those of you that are out there doing that. And as you come back into the brick and mortar huddle, I just wanted to say once again what you can expect when you get here. And what you can expect is everybody taking this serious. You can expect a nested environment with SDDC and Transcom, and in fact you see personnel represented from both organizations at every entry control point as you come back in. You can expect to see those COVID standards and discipline and the COVID-oriented protective posture practiced throughout this facility and certainly throughout the brigades all the way out to the tactical edge. You can expect to see a workplace that feels safe because we're instituting social distancing, and where we can't, we're wearing masks. And you can expect to see increased sanitation protocols, and it's going to be evident. But what's also evident is the great work that you're doing every day, the great effects and outputs that we're accomplishing and achieving on behalf of the Army and the Joint Force. And I just couldn't be more proud of the effort of each and every one of you and what you're doing out there. And as you come back in, we're excited to be able to see you again. And I want you to know that if you're one of those people that doesn't come back immediately, and we're phasing in a very measured and conditions-based approach, like the CG said, you're no less important. Every shoulder's hitting the sled, and we can't thank you enough. Sir, over to you.
No, thanks, Sergeant Major, and thanks to you both for that. I'll just close with a couple quick things here. And one is, I've asked the team here to put together, we have a really good cartoon statistics chart that we have that shows just the volume, tempo, complexity, and the warfighting output that's been going on since the COVID hit. And we're going to do that not on a Facebook post, but more of an email burst, Surface Warrior Nation, so everybody can appreciate the amount of work that is going on in spite of the COVID, and that happens whether you're in the G8, the G14, we're still hiring people, we're still paying for things, we're still tracking funds, we're still doing contract management reviews, we're still executing at a high level at the nodes, and we're doing it with the right standards and discipline, but we're moving at the right speed. And speed's our organizational guiding principle, and we're gonna outrun this virus. You know, we gotta stay in front of the virus. Complacency is where the virus lives. And in order for us to fight that, we cannot let our guard down or this virus can creep in. We gotta stay out in front, we gotta keep sprinting in front of this virus and fighting it off with good standards and discipline, and that expectation is what we have back to the themes, which was really reintegration and leading through transitions. We're gonna have new Surface Warriors coming on the team in the course of the summer. We want to bring them into the ecosystem, integrate them into what's going on, make sure we're getting our reintegration training right, and all those types of things. You just need to trust, we want to express to you to trust that your command is engaged. Every day we are scanning the horizons, we are making sure we're adhering to standards and discipline, policies, guidance. Every day that we come in, we have an entire team of teams that is getting after all the layers that are required to make sure that we are operating at a high level so that we can lead through this COVID and keep fighting through this. Because we're gonna come out stronger on the back end. I am convinced of that. We're already learning things that we never thought about. Our work is gonna change, how we telework. There's no schism to that anymore, there's no stigma to that. That's gonna change things for us. Keep thinking differently out there, keep throwing ideas at us. Send your cards and letters if there's things we can be doing better, or if there's ways you'd like us to communicate better with you. We are trying to push ourselves to think differently about this as well. And just remember in closing, our priorities have not changed. It's protect the force and mission assurance. And we are gonna strike a balance in that. That's not a 1 and 2, that's a Venn diagram. And what we have to do is balance those two in everything that we do. And we're gonna do that through reintegration, we're gonna do that through the summer, and that's what's gonna keep us strong and keep Surface Warrior Nation in the right boxer stance so we can jab and box our way through this COVID and keep the mission going. I'm immensely proud of everybody and what you're doing out there. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work, Surface Warriors.